Good morning everyone. Basa na tayo ating libro guys. Kapwa ako Filipino, magbasa na tayo nating history. History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is 9 February 2023. History of the Filipino People Part 4, the American Period. Topic number 19, the OS-ROX and Quezon Missions. Nandito tayo sa paragraph, the controversy over the OS-ROX law. Basa. So many Americans deposits of the Harry-Howes Cutting Act was a fitting climax to the the controversy over the OS-ROX law. Too many Americans deposits of the Harry-Howes Cutting Act was a fitting climax to the long and acrimonious battle that had in fact begun in 1898 between the advocates and opponents of Philippine independence. Insofar as the United States was concerned, therefore, the Philippine question had been resolved to the satisfaction of all those concerned. In the Philippines, however, the battle was far from over. The implementation of the Independence Act was conditioned upon its acceptance by the Philippine legislature or by a convention called by the Philippine legislature for that purpose. For valid as well as for political and personal reasons, the law was unacceptable to the Filipino leaders. The Harry-Howes Cutting Act was the first definite offer of the United States to grant independence. Political experience had shown that advocacy of independence was the For valid as well as for political and personal reasons, the law was unacceptable to the Filipino leaders. The Harry-Howes Cutting Act was the first definite offer of the United States to grant independence. Political experience has shown that advocacy of independence was the only platform acceptable to the people. The bringing home an independence law would be the greatest political asset that any Filipino leader could acquire. It was understandable, therefore, that the Harry-Howes Cutting Act would generate a bitter political controversy, which involved not only the problem of leadership in the Nacionalista Party but of the entire country as well. The OS-ROX mission had been granted entire freedom by the Philippine legislature to attain the earliest independence possible. Thus, when the mission departed, napunit. Sayang. Thus, when the mission departed for the United States, it was not bound. Marupok na to guys kasi nga lumang-luma na. Thus, when the mission departed for the United States, it was not bound by any specific instruction that would restrict its dealings with the American legislators. But when it became increasingly clear that the independence law Congress was willing to pass would inevitably include provisions that would only bring severe economic difficulties and perhaps render future independence illusory and farcical, Quezon publicly expressed his doubt and apprehension of the kind of legislation the OS-ROX mission was trying to secure. Early in 1932, Quezon requested Osmeña and Rojas to come home for consultations before the bill pending in Congress could make any considerable headway. Then, upon learning of determined congressional moves to drastically cut down the quota of Philippine sugar and limit immigration, Quezon instructed the mission on December 10, 1932, that if no legislation granting favorable economic conditions could be obtained, they had better work for immediate independence, and if this could not be secured, to drop their efforts until President-elect Franklin D. Roosevelt and the Democrat-dominated Congress were installed in January 1933. The Harry-Howes Cutting Bill, however, was enacted before the Democrats came into power. Understandably, Osmeña and Rojas declined to follow Quezon's instructions. The mission feared that the impending changes in the composition of the American Congress, with many new members unfamiliar with the pulping problem coming in and sympathetic legislators already retiring, might make it impossible for the new Congress to pass a better independence bill. Fully aware that the concern over the worsening economic crisis in the United States would relegate the pulping problem to the background, the missioners felt that the slackening in their efforts would be disastrous to the pulping cause. Though fully aware of the objectionable features of the Harry Howes Cutting Act, the missioners believed it was the best law that could be obtained under the circumstances. In March 1933, Quezon, at the head of a handpicked and official mission, made a hasty trip to Washington but failed to settle the differences with the OS-ROX mission. Failing as well to impress Washington policymakers with the need for a better independence measure, Quezon returned in June 1933 with the OS-ROX mission, who had by then finished their work in the American capital. Even before the Harry Howes Cutting Bill was enacted into law, public debates on the mission and on the conduct of the OS-ROX mission in declining to follow the advice of Quezon had been raging in and out of the Philippine legislature. The return of the mission from Washington and the subsequent debates on the law served merely to intensify the controversy. Despite efforts to obviate an open split among the leaders of the Nacionalista Party, both sides affirmed their divergent attitudes toward the act. The Nacionalista Party split into factions: the pros who favored the acceptance of the Harry Howes Cutting Act and the antis who opposed the law. Close associates in the academic and other professions found their friendship brought to a test by the controversy. Resident Commissioner Camilo Osillas, Jose P. Laurel, Dean of the UP College of Liberal Arts Maximo M. Calao, and Representative Gregorio Perfecto were counted among the supporters of Osmeña and Rojas. The brilliant Democrata oppositionists Recto and Sumolong, Emilio Aguinaldo, Bishop Gregorio Aglipay, Dean of the UP College of Law George Bocobo, even the expatriate revolutionary Artemio Ricarte joined the ranks of the Quezon faction. Behind the scenes, powerful vested interests, particularly the sugar producers, contributed heavily to Quezon's drive against the acceptance of the Harry Howes Cutting Act. The ensuing struggle, a battle royale, fought without gloves, was not only a conflict between issues and principles, but also between two opposite and powerful personalities. Inevitably, the controversy over the acceptance of the law became inextricably intertwined with the question of control of the Nacionalista Party and the government. The crucial decision to accept or reject the Harry Howes Cutting Act lay with the Philippine legislature. Osmeña's motion to hold a plebiscite so that the people may participate in the resolution of the problem was defeated by Quezon because it would entail unnecessary expenses, perhaps also because the fear that the people with independence within reach might vote in favor of the act. Upon the opening of the legislature in July 1933, Quezon so reorganized both chambers that only opponents of the law, men of his choice and confidence, held key positions therein. Jose Claren succeeded Osmeña as president pro tempore of the Senate. Quintin Paredes replaced Rojas as a speaker of the lower house. Then Quezon installed new floor leaders and committee chairmen in both chambers. With the reorganization of the legislature, the antis gained complete control of the situation. On October 17, 1933, the legislature, by concurrent resolution, declined to accept the Harry Howes Cutting Act on the ground that, number 1, the provisions affecting trade relations between the United States and the Philippines would seriously imperil the economic, social, and political institution of the Philippines and might defeat its avowed purpose of securing independence at the end of the transition period. Number 2, the immigration clause was objectionable and offensive. Number 3, the powers of the American High Commissioner were too indefinite. And number 4, the retention of military, naval, and other reservations was inconsistent with true independence, violate national dignity, and are subject to misunderstanding. The legislature then appointed Quezon to head another mission to the United States to seek a more favorable independence mission. I think bukas na tong guys. Tidings McDuffie. Mahaba-haba eh. Okay. Bye everyone. God bless.